She looked me dead in the eyes, across a candlelit table, first date in 2 years, and said, "You can leave. I'm a single mom." Like she was handing me a grenade and daring me to pull the pin. Every other man had taken that exit. And the terrifying part? For a second, I almost did too. But something made me stay. And what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about love, fear, and what it actually means to show up for someone. Don't go anywhere. Because the moment she realized I wasn't leaving, that's where this story gets dangerous. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. I want to ask you something before we begin. Have you ever talked yourself out of something good? Not because it was wrong, but because you were terrified it might actually be right. That's where I was. 34 years old, father of twin 7-year-old boys, standing in my bathroom mirror on a Friday night, trying to remember how to look like a man who had it together. I didn't. My name is Cole Merritt. And the last time I went on a date, my wife, my ex-wife, was still pretending she loved me. That was 2 years ago. 2 years of school lunches packed wrong, of bedtime stories read in a voice too tired to do the character voices justice, of Saturday mornings when my boys, Eli and Owen, would crawl into my bed at 6 a.m. and I'd hold them like they were the only anchors keeping me from drifting somewhere I couldn't come back from. Because, honestly, they were. I buttoned my shirt, the blue one, the one my buddy Derek said made me look dateable. And I stood there staring at myself like I was looking at a stranger. I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something for me. Not for the boys. Not for the mortgage or the grocery run or the parent-teacher conference. For me. Dad. Eli appeared in the doorway, sock on one foot, none on the other, holding a juice box like a scepter. You look weird. Thanks, bud. Like, good weird, Owen added helpfully from somewhere behind the door. Like a teacher weird. That's not better, I said. They both laughed. That laugh, God, that laugh. It was the same laugh. Identical faces, identical giggle, and yet I could tell them apart in a dark room by the way they breathed. 7 years of that. 7 years of being their whole world and them being mine. I crouched down to Eli's level. Grandma's coming to watch you guys tonight, okay? You be good for her. Eli studied me with the kind of serious expression only a 7-year-old can weaponize. Is this because of the lady? I blinked. What lady? The one Uncle Derek said you were gonna go see. He sipped his juice box. Loudly. He said you needed to get back out there. He said the last part in a deep, dramatically bad impression of Derek, and Owen dissolved into giggles behind the door. I made a mental note to kill Derek. It's just dinner, I said. I'll be back before bedtime. Promise. Promise. That word used to cost me nothing. Now it cost me everything. Because the last person who promised my boys something and didn't deliver was their mother. And I watched what that did to them for 6 months after she left. I don't make promises I don't keep. Not anymore. My mother arrived at 6:15, took one look at me, pressed her hand to my cheek and said, "You deserve this, Cole." Just that. 4 words. And I had to look away before she saw my eyes go glassy. Across town, in an apartment that smelled like lavender and crayon wax, a woman named Vivian Cross was having an argument with her mirror too. She just didn't know it was an argument yet. She called it getting ready. The rest of us would have recognized it as negotiating with herself, one hand on the mascara wand, the other gripping the bathroom counter, asking the woman in the reflection, "Why are you doing this? You know how this ends." Vivian was 32. Dark-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of beautiful that sneaks up on you because she carried it like it was inconvenient. She was a pediatric occupational therapist, patient with children in ways she had never quite learned to be patient with herself. She had a daughter named Zoe, 5 years old, currently asleep in the next room under 3 blankets because Zoe believed monsters were allergic to warmth. Zoe's father had been gone since before Zoe was born. Not dead. Just gone. The kind of gone that doesn't leave an explanation. Just an absence shaped like a person. Vivian had stopped being angry about it somewhere around Zoe's second birthday. What replaced the anger was something quieter and more dangerous. A deep, practiced certainty that she was better off not needing anyone. She was good at it. She had a system. Keep things light. Keep things brief. If a man got too close, she found the exit before he could find it first. It wasn't cruelty, it was armor. And she'd spent 5 years polishing it until it shone. Tonight she was wearing a green dress because her friend Marisol had picked it and Vivian had run out of objections. She'd agreed to the date because Marisol had worn her down over 3 weeks of texts and 2 glasses of wine on a Tuesday. The man's name was Cole. He was a single dad. Marisol had shown her a photo and Vivian had said, "He's fine," in the tone of voice that meant don't push it. She leaned close to the mirror. Applied the mascara. Stepped back. One dinner, she told herself. You can survive one dinner. She kissed Zoe's forehead without waking her. Stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the tiny rise and fall of her daughter's chest. You're the reason I'm careful, she thought. You're the reason I don't let people in. She closed the door softly and walked out into the night. 2 people. 2 apartments. 2 hearts that had learned, the hard way, that love was a door that sometimes locked you out instead of in. Neither of them knew they were about to knock on the same door at the same time. If you've ever had to talk yourself into letting someone in, drop a comment below. You're not alone in that. The restaurant Derek picked was the kind of place that tried too hard. Candles on every table, a jazz playlist that was just loud enough to make you lean in when you talked. I got there first. Of course I did. I'd been sitting in the parking lot for 11 minutes because I left the house 40 minutes early like a man who had completely forgotten how human beings behave. I was on my second bread roll when she walked in. And I want to be honest with you, I almost didn't recognize her from the photo Marisol had shown me. Not because she looked different. Because she looked more. Green dress, dark hair loose around her shoulders, walking like she was already calculating the fastest route to the exit. She scanned the room, found me, and something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe, or resignation. I couldn't tell yet. Cole, she said. Vivian. I stood up too fast and nearly knocked my water glass over. Caught it. She watched me catch it. A smile ghosted across her lips. The involuntary kind, the kind people try to suppress. Nice reflexes, she said. I have twin 7-year-olds, I said. I've caught falling objects in my sleep. She laughed. A real one. Short, surprised, like it escaped before she could stop it. And something in my chest did a thing it hadn't done in 2 years. We sat. We ordered. And for the first 20 minutes it was good. Genuinely, unexpectedly good. She was funny in a dry, quiet way. She asked real questions, not first-date performance questions. When I told her about Eli and Owen, how they were identical but Owen cried at every Pixar movie while Eli pretended not to and then cried alone later, she laughed again and this time she let it stay on her face. I told her about the last 2 years. Not all of it, but enough. I told her that after my ex-wife left, I spent 3 months being angry, and then one morning Eli crawled into bed at 5 a.m. and put his small hand on my face and said, "It's okay, Daddy," and I realized I didn't have time to fall apart. So I didn't. Vivian went quiet. She turned her wine glass slowly on the table. That's, she started, then stopped. What? That's a lot to carry alone. Yeah, I said. But I've got good cargo. She smiled at that. And then she looked at me, really looked at me, and I felt something shift between us. Like a frequency finding its signal. And that's when she said it. She set her wine glass down. Straightened slightly. And with the careful precision of someone defusing a bomb they've defused before, she said, "Cole, you seem like a genuinely good man. And I need to tell you something before this goes any further." I waited. I'm a single mom. She held my gaze. And before you say that doesn't matter, it does. It means my life is not flexible. It means Zoe comes first, always. It means I don't have the bandwidth for something complicated. A pause. So if this is feeling like something that could get complicated, she gestured loosely between us. You can leave. I won't hold it against you. The table went quiet between us. I looked at her, at the careful steadiness in her eyes, at the slight tension in her jaw, at the way her hand had gone still on the stem of her wine glass, and I understood with startling clarity that she had said this before, that she had practiced it, that it was a door she'd learned to close before anyone else could. I didn't leave. I said, I'm not leaving. She blinked. Like that wasn't the script. Vivian, I have twin boys who once flooded the bathroom trying to give a goldfish a bath. My life is already complicated. I'm not scared of complicated. She studied me for a long moment. Then she picked up her wine glass and looked away. You say that now. I mean it now. Men usually do, she said quietly. Not cruel. Just honest. And there it was, the wall. Not dramatic, not angry. Just present. Solid. Built brick by brick from every man who'd said the right thing and then found the exit anyway. I could feel it. And the frustrating thing was, I understood it completely because I had my own walls just built from different rubble. I leaned back. Gave her space. Tell me about Zoe, I said. She looked at me sideways. Why? Because you lit up when you almost mentioned her, I said. Right after I talked about the boys. You stopped yourself. I noticed. A long pause. She's 5, Vivian said finally. She believes blankets protect her from monsters. She calls spaghetti paschetti, and I haven't corrected her because, her voice softened, I'm not ready for her to stop. She looked down. She's the funniest person I've ever met. She sounds like Owen, I said. And for a moment, just a moment, the wall had a window in it. But then the check came, and Vivian reached for it with the automatic reflex of a woman who had learned not to let people pay for things because it meant owing something. I put my hand over hers without thinking. She froze. I've got it, I said. Not because it means anything. Just because I asked you here. She pulled her hand back slowly. Thank you, she said. Careful. Like the word cost her. We walked out into the cool night air. Standing beside our separate cars, there was a pause that stretched long enough to mean something. This was nice, she said. It was, I agreed. Cole. She turned her keys over in her hand. I wasn't trying to push you away in there. I know, I said. She stopped. Looked up at the sky briefly. I'm not good at this anymore. If I ever was. Neither am I said. But I'd like to try being bad at it together if that's an option. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she got in her car and drove away. And I stood in that parking lot for a solid minute, hands in my pockets, thinking, don't let this be the end of it. Don't you dare let this be the end of it. Here's what I didn't know that night. Zoe and Owen went to the same school. I found out the following Monday morning when I walked into Jefferson Elementary with Owen's forgotten lunchbox, turned a corner, and nearly walked directly into Vivian. She was crouched down, zipping up a little girl's backpack. Tiny thing, dark curls, wearing rain boots with frogs on them despite the complete absence of rain. Zoe, I realized. Had to be. Vivian looked up. And for one unguarded second, her face did something complicated. Then she stood. Cole. Vivian. I held up the lunchbox. Forgot this. Mama, Zoe announced, tugging Vivian's sleeve and pointing at me with zero subtlety. That man is looking at you. Vivian closed her eyes briefly. Zoe. He is, though. Owen appeared at my elbow. I hadn't even seen him approach. He stared at Zoe with the focused intensity of a golden retriever spotting a tennis ball. Are those frog boots? He demanded. Zoe looked down at her boots. Looked at Owen. Yes. I have dinosaur ones, he said gravely. But frogs are better. A pause. I know, said Zoe. And just like that they walked into school together. Vivian and I stood there, watching them go, and the silence between us had changed shape overnight. Of course, she said softly. Yeah, I said. She looked at me sideways. If this becomes a thing. It doesn't have to, I said carefully. But if it does, she pressed. I need you to understand that Zoe can't watch another person walk away. She's 5. She doesn't have armor yet. That landed in the center of my chest and stayed there. I understand that better than you think, I said. She looked at me, really looked. And then she nodded once. Coffee, she said. Saturday. Just coffee. Not a date. Just coffee, I agreed. And I walked back to my car with that lunchbox swinging from my hand and something unfamiliar and terrifying blooming in my chest. Hope. Stupid, inconvenient, necessary hope. Saturday coffee turned into 2 hours. 2 hours became a walk. The walk became sitting on a park bench while she told me things I don't think she'd said out loud in a long time. Zoe's father, his name was Brendan, had disappeared at 8 weeks pregnant. Not a dramatic exit. Just a series of unanswered texts and then a moved-out apartment. Vivian had spent her entire pregnancy alone, working full-time, telling everyone she was fine. She'd gotten very good at fine. The worst part, she said, staring at the fountain in front of us, wasn't that he left. It was that I knew. 3 weeks in, something in me knew he wasn't staying. And I stayed anyway. She paused. I've never forgiven myself for not trusting that feeling. I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, my ex-wife checked out about a year before she actually left. I saw it happening and I kept trying to fix things she didn't want fixed. I turned my coffee cup in my hands. Same thing. We both stayed past the warning signs because we wanted the story to be different than it was. She turned and looked at me. Yeah, she said softly. Exactly that. What are you most afraid of when it comes to letting someone new into your life? Drop it in the comments. I think more of us feel this than we admit. We sat there in that shared understanding that doesn't need a lot of words, the kind you only reach with someone who's been through the specific kind of quiet devastation of loving someone who couldn't love you back the way you needed. I'm not him, I said quietly. Not defensively. Just true. I know you're not, she said. That's almost the problem. What does that mean? She looked at me. It means you're the first person in 5 years who's made me wish I was braver. The next 3 weeks were the best I'd had in 2 years. We kept it slow. Coffee here, a phone call there. One afternoon the kids ended up at the same playground, arranged by Owen and Zoe with a level of covert logistics that honestly impressed me. And we sat on a bench watching them tear across the climbing structure like they'd been friends since birth. Eli, my more serious twin, watched Zoe with skeptical eyes for exactly 4 minutes before she talked him into a game only she knew the rules to. He followed her around after that like she was a tiny, bossy moon. Your daughter, I said, is something else. Vivian laughed. She runs my entire house. Has since she was 3. Owen's the same. He just does it with more crying. She bumped her shoulder against mine. Casual, easy, the first time she'd initiated any kind of physical contact. I didn't make a thing of it. But I felt it everywhere. That evening, after the kids had worn themselves to exhaustion, I drove her and Zoe home. Vivian got Zoe inside and came back to the door while I was still at the curb. She leaned against the doorframe. Cole, she said. Yeah. A pause. Thank you. For being patient with me. I'm not going anywhere, I said. And this time she let herself believe it. Just a little. I could see it in the way her shoulders dropped, this small, almost imperceptible release of tension, like she'd been holding her breath for 5 years and finally remembered how to exhale. I drove home that night with the windows down despite the cold. It fell apart on a Thursday. The way fragile things always do. Not in a storm, but in a quiet, terrible moment. I'd had a hard week. Owen had come home from school with a note about behavioral issues. Apparently he'd cried during art class and then pushed a kid who laughed at him. I'd been in 3 meetings with his teacher, running on no sleep, trying to figure out if my son needed therapy or just his father to be more present or both. I was stretched thin and snapping at edges. Vivian had texted to cancel our Friday plans. Short text. Brief. Zoe's sick, need to rain check. I texted back fine, no worries. But then I saw, and this is the part that makes me sound worse than I am, but I'm telling you the truth, she'd posted a photo on her Instagram. Her and Marisol out at a wine bar. Friday night. I sat with that for exactly as long as it took me to convince myself it meant what I feared it meant. And then I texted her, "Glad Zoe's feeling better." It was pointed. She knew it was pointed. She called me. I answered. "It's not what you didn't have to lie," I said. My voice was too flat. I knew it was too flat, but I couldn't find warmth right then. If you needed space, you could have said that. I did need space, Cole. And you couldn't tell me that? Because, she stopped. Then quietly, because if I said I needed space you would have asked why, and I don't know how to explain why without sounding. Without sounding what? Terrified. Her voice broke on the word. Okay. I'm terrified. Things are getting real and I don't know how to do real without ruining it. So yes, I lied. Because the truth felt like too much. I should have softened then. I know that now. But I was tired and raw and I said the wrong thing. Vivian, I can't keep being the only one trying here. Silence. Then stop trying, she said. And hung up. I sat in my kitchen for a long time. Owen came downstairs for water and found me there, staring at my phone. Dad. He put his small hand on my arm. You okay? Yeah, bud, I said. Go back to sleep. He went. And I sat in the silence that love leaves when you've handled it badly, and I thought about how quickly walls go back up, both hers and mine. 4 days. That's how long I let it sit. 4 days of drop-off at school where we nodded at each other like cordial strangers. 4 days of Owen asking why Zoe seemed sad. 4 days of Eli, my perceptive one, watching me with those quiet eyes that missed nothing. On the 4th night, Eli came to sit next to me on the couch after the bedtime routine. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, Dad, do you like Zoe's mom? I looked at him. Why? Because you act the same way you acted before Grandma's birthday when you broke her vase and didn't tell her yet. He paused. Like you're carrying something. 7 years old. Yeah, I said quietly. I do like her. So why do you look sad? Because sometimes when you like someone, it gets complicated. He considered this with devastating seriousness. Did you tell her? Tell her what? That you like her. He said it like it was the most obvious solution in the world. Like all adult problems were just people failing to say the obvious thing. I looked at my son, this small, earnest, slightly bossy version of me, and I felt something break open in my chest in the best possible way. Not well enough, I said. He nodded, satisfied, and went to bed. I picked up my phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. And then I stopped trying to compose the perfect text and called her instead. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Silence on both ends. I'm sorry, I said. For the way I said what I said. You were honest with me and I made you feel punished for it. A long pause. I could hear her breathing. I lied to you, she said quietly. You were scared. I get scared too. I just do it by getting cold instead of disappearing, but it's the same thing. Another silence. Then, Cole, I don't know how to be someone who lets people stay. I've been alone so long that alone feels safer than. Then what? Then watching you eventually figure out this is too much. Vivian. I pressed the phone close. I have twin 7-year-old boys, a mortgage I'm 1 bad month from falling behind on, a kid who cries at Pixar movies, and I still haven't seen Inside Out 2 because I'm afraid I'll lose it in the theater. A pause. I am not looking for easy. I'm looking for real. The silence that followed was different from the others. Softer. I don't know if I'm brave enough for this, she whispered. You don't have to be brave, I said. You just have to let me stay. She let me stay. Not all at once, that's not how it works, and anyone who tells you healing is sudden is selling you something. It was slow. It was imperfect. There were weeks where old fear would surface in her like a tide, and I'd feel it and I'd stay anyway. There were nights I drove home wondering if I was pushing too hard or not hard enough. But I stayed. And slowly, gradually, she stopped expecting me to leave. 3 months after that phone call, on a Saturday afternoon that smelled like cut grass and sunscreen, Vivian and I were sitting on a blanket at the same park where we'd had our first real conversation. The kids were 20 feet away, Owen and Zoe deep in an argument about the rules of some game, Eli mediating with the solemnity of a small judge. Zoe had started calling me Cole in a very specific tone that suggested she'd decided I was acceptable but wasn't going to make a big deal of it. Owen had started saving Zoe a seat on the climbing structure. Eli had, without any announcement, appointed himself her protector on the playground. Families look different ways. I'd learned that. Vivian was leaning slightly against my shoulder. It had started as an accident 2 weeks ago. She'd been tired, leaned in, then started to pull back, and I just quietly stayed still. She'd stayed. And we'd never addressed it, just let it become a thing we did. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." She was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something without you making it weird?" "Almost certainly not," I said. She laughed. Then she turned to look at me, really look. The same way she had at the restaurant on our first date, before the wall came up. But this time the wall wasn't there. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she said. It landed on me like the first warm day after a long winter. Quiet. Total. "Vivian," I said. "Don't make it a big thing." Too late. I looked at her, and I didn't try to manage what was on my face. "I've been in love with you since you tried to give me an exit on the first date, and I realized that no version of this ends with me going anywhere." She made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a breath. Her eyes went bright. "I should warn you," she said. "I'm going to get scared again." "I know. And I might pull back." "I know. And Zoe is going to test every single limit you have. She's already planning it, I can tell." "Vivian." I turned to face her fully. "I know. And I'm staying." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she leaned in and kissed me. Soft, certain, the kind of kiss that isn't a beginning but a confirmation. Like two people finally exhaling the same breath. Across the grass, Owen's voice. "EWW, Dad." Eli calmly. "It's fine, Owen. That's what grown-ups do." Zoe loudly. "My MOM is kissing that man." And Vivian laughed against my mouth. Surprised and unguarded and completely, finally, free. I think about that Friday night sometimes. The way she sat across from me with her exit strategy already loaded. "You can leave, I'm a single mom," and how close I came to letting the moment pass. How easy it would have been to take the door she offered. But here's what I've learned. The bravest thing you can do isn't the grand gesture. It's the quiet decision to stay when every scared part of you is pointing at the exit. Vivian taught me that love doesn't ask you to be fearless. It just asks you to keep showing up afraid. And the four of us, 2 single parents, 3 kids between us, 1 improbable, unhurried, unexpected love, we're still showing up. If this story hit close to home, I want to hear from you. Have you ever let fear talk you out of something, or someone, who was worth staying for? Tell me in the comments. You might be surprised how many people need to hear your story too. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.